Hi, I'm Allison,
And I'm Sarah.
and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the power of our words and how we use words to communicate in different contexts and how that affects different people. So, kind of just to start off, I think the power of our words create our human experience. It's really how we connect with people, and it's how we engage with creation and how we engage with different people in humanity. I also think that words have a lot of power behind them. So they have the ability to cause a lot of change, a lot of really good change in our world, and they have the ability to inspire people and have really deep connections. But on the other hand, they have the ability to cause a lot of pain and suffering. And I think from the way we've seen people use words in the wrong context and use them for their personal gain or power, we've seen a lot of like pain come out of that. And that's the cause of a lot of war in our world and a lot of hurt on an individual and on a global aspect. And so I think that Sarah kind of has how that's been affected in social media and how communication has really changed since social media has come about.
Yeah, so when I first read this question, I automatically thought about social media just because it surrounds our life like a lot and I personally definitely use it a lot and I think that um it's sad, but when I did start thinking about social media in this context, I thought about the negativity that words are bringing like when we're on those platforms and like it's so easy for people to be like negative and hateful on social media and I think that these like since words are so powerful like it can send people into like such sadness and such a dark place but I also see that like there is positivity on social media and that can also be powerful and so I think that like for me personally I try like my hardest to like lift people up through social media and like through the internet and things like that because of the overwhelming like hurt that other people are bringing through their words so yeah.
Yeah. And I think kind of along that, like just the power of communication has the ability to really impact someone's life, whether that be good or bad. And we've kind of seen this like a lot on social media that words can really impact someone, whether that be positive or negative. And you kind of see like both sides of it on, for say, like, for example, Instagram. You can see maybe like a really positive message one day, but then a really hurtful message another day. And I think that tension is where we have to really navigate and we have to be able to understand our own place on social media because even though it's like behind a screen, we don't really see how our words might be affecting someone as we do in real life with body language or how our emotions change when we say something. On social media, we have to really like understand the weight of our words. And so, yeah, I think for me, like as you were saying, I try to like keep things really lighthearted and positive, and I haven't really like taken social media too seriously. But even this past summer, kind of with like the social unrest and political unrest in our country, I realized that like social media is a really great platform to evoke change and like use my words for good. And I really just realized that like it's a great medium of communication and it's where people are these days. So like if we want to connect with people, we kind of need to like adapt to the culture and see how our communication can take the format of social media.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, kind of moving on to the next question. Um, I think from a biblical perspective, Jesus speaks a lot on how we communicate, but he also doesn't say a lot on it as well. And so I found a really great passage in James. And so I'm just going to read it. It's James 1:19 through 25. And it says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Therefore, get rid of our moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourself. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do." So this passage really just speaks on the power of listening. And I think a lot of times we like forget that in communication, listening is like a huge aspect of it. James in this moment really just like calls on people to listen before they speak and really realize like the impact that their words may have on another person. And I think a big part of this is like communicating with empathy and really being slow to speak. So I think Sarah has some more on that.
Yeah, for sure. Just like from personal experience, like a couple years ago, probably like last year, like I used to have a really hard time with conversations with people that thought differently than I did because I wasn't slow to speak and I didn't really listen to what they were saying. And I took a lot of their words out of context and my anger would show through like totally and it kind of like sometimes like made relationships uneasy for me. And so like through this past year, like I've been really like attempting to listen to people and actually like internalize what they're saying and try to understand them from their perspective because I've learned that like not everybody has the same perspective and not everybody like is going to think the same as you, and so it's time for us to like listen to each other. And so I really like that verse that you picked out because I think it speaks to what our climate is right now and like what we should be doing is listening to people and trying or attempting not to get so angry.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like, especially for me, I have a really hard time like communicating with people who have especially different like political beliefs or opinions about humanity or a wide variety of things. I just have a really hard time like empathizing and understanding someone else's beliefs. And so I think this passage really just like reset me and said, you know, first come from a place of listening and then come from a place of speaking, which I like oftentimes do the opposite. And I think I especially really need to work on that, but it's something that like I think if everyone worked on collectively, we would just have like a way kinder society and a place that like empathizes like Jesus does, and really just like takes the words placed in the Bible to heart, to actually like love your neighbor by listening to your neighbor. Yeah, and so kind of moving into the last question we have here, about like working in a secular organization. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah. So when I read this question, I just thought back to my days in student government. Um, and like a lot of my goal there was just to bring like, I don't know, it sounds kind of weird, like justice, I guess, um, to people of color on campus because a lot of the time, like they felt like they weren't being seen. And so when I spoke in meetings, like people would always tell me that you could see the passion. And so that's something that like I took with me and like that I value in myself that I am able to speak with passion. Um, and another thing that I really try to do is like bring people like into my brain, I guess. I want them to see like what I see and like to be able to understand and relate and things like that. And the way I like to do that is using stories because I think that through stories like we can like empathize with people, I guess. And like yeah, I don't know really how to explain it, but like stories for me, like they're easy to follow. And like, again, like I usually find myself empathizing with characters or even real people if they're real accounts. And so I think that using that will help people to understand you and what you're saying.
Yeah. And you were talking a lot about like storytelling and how that relates to empathizing. And I mean, we even talk about that like all the time in public relations. Storytelling is like a cornerstone of PR. And I think it's because we want people to empathize with whatever story we're telling so that they trust a brand or trust a product or whatever it may be, trust a nonprofit. And yeah, and so I think like storytelling and empathizing are a way that we can bring like Jesus like traits into a secular cause. And I think a lot of times we try to separate secular organizations from faith-based organizations, or a person working for a secular organization that maybe is spiritual or is a Christian. And I don't think we necessarily have to do that, because us as Christians, that's like a part of who we are, and our morals and our beliefs and our ethics are all shaped by our faith and shaped by what Jesus did for us and how he lived his life. And so going into a secular organization and advocating for a cause, we don't necessarily need to separate our Christianity and separate what Jesus did for us from that cause, because I think in a lot of ways it almost makes it way stronger. And I'm kind of thinking of the way that Jesus fought for the disenfranchised, and he spoke up for what he believed in. And I think it just like communicates how important our biblical perspective is in secular spaces, even if we don't need to necessarily bring up Jesus in every single conversation. But I think, as you were saying before, like the passion that you have in your voice and in your storytelling, and in just the way you carry yourself, like the passion that people can see and feel really sets Christians apart in any organization that they go into. And so I think this kind of just like wraps up how communication is like a cornerstone of our humanity. It's the way God speaks to us. It's the way we speak to each other. It's the way we empathize and understand with each other. And I think without communication, we would be completely lost, which is why we need to learn how to like effectively communicate with each other in a way that has grace and compassion.
Yeah, I think that was really well said, Allison.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all we have. Thank you.
Bye.